Good morning. I'm Maiki Oreta, and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. The Philippine economy is projected to grow faster in the third quarter, with expansion seen at 5.8%. Exporters warn that Philippine shipments to the U.S. face a dim outlook, threatening to drag down the country's overall trade performance. And Batangas Representative Leandro Leviste wins praise after turning down a chunky 360 million peso bribe tied to an infrastructure project in his district. All that and more coming up. Let's take a look at how global markets moved overnight. Wall Street closes higher Friday after Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell hinted at a possible rate cut in his Jackson Hole speech. He said a decision could come at the September 16 to 17 meeting, but stressed the call will depend on jobs and inflation data. Traders now price in nearly a 90% chance of a September cut, up from about 75% before his remarks. For the Philippines, Wall Street's rally matters. A Fed rate cut could spark further capital flows into emerging markets, lift bonds and equities, and ease pressure on the peso.
Stocks are up today. Partly, you might have there's a combination of events. It could be things like you've got lighter volume technically. You had the door open, and markets are taking it like the door is wide open for a September rate cut, which markets had been looking for or hoping for, but not necessarily counting on. And so I think the fact that Chair Powell was quite clear in his conversation, or seemed to indicate pretty clearly, not only about September rate cut, but some other interesting observations about the economy make markets happy.
Both the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq surged nearly 2%, while the S&P 500 added 1.5%. In Europe, stocks also closed higher. London's FTSE added 0.1%. Germany's DAX higher by 0.3%, and France's CAC 40 up by 0.4%. The Philippine economy is seen growing faster in the third quarter, with expansion projected at 5.8%. In its latest market call report, the University of Asia and the Pacific says milder typhoons and stronger household consumption could drive the pickup. Consumption is getting a lift from easing inflation, a key support for gross domestic product, or GDP. The 5.8% forecast sits comfortably within the government's target range of 5.5 to 6.5%. For the first half, GDP growth averaged at 5.4%. If achieved, the outlook signals stronger momentum heading into the year end, a boost for investors watching whether the Philippines can hit its 2025 growth target. Now, dim outlook for Philippine exports to the United States this year threatens to drag the country's overall trade performance. At the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry's General Membership meeting in Makati, PhilExport President Sergio Ortiz-Luis Jr. said exporters remain uncertain if they can easily penetrate other markets outside the United States. He noted that while diversification is the government's long-term strategy to cushion the impact of U.S. tariffs, it remains a challenge without adequate funding and support. Ortiz-Luis added that for 2 decades, diversification efforts have stalled, unlike neighboring countries that invest heavily in research and development. With Washington's new tariffs taking effect, the pressure is on for the Philippines to speed up trade reforms or risk losing more ground to regional competitors. Fresh capital is flowing into the Philippines' tourism sector. The Tourism Infrastructure and Enterprise Zone Authority, or TIEZA, reports nearly 6.2 billion pesos in committed investments from the hospitality industry. TIEZA Chief Operating Officer Dr. Mark Lapid says the funds cover both new and expansion projects, expected to generate more than 1,500 jobs in local communities. He notes that while the commitments date back to the Tourism Act of 2009, policy changes in 2021 opened the door for standalone accommodation enterprises to register. TIEZA serves as the infrastructure and investment arm of the Department of Tourism. The push comes as tourism is being positioned as a key growth driver, with fresh investments boosting jobs, local economies, and the country's competitiveness as a regional destination. An act of public service draws national attention. Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste gets praise from Senator Panfilo Lacson. This comes after reports that the lawmaker turned down a 360 million peso kickback allegedly offered by a district engineer of the Department of Public Works and Highways in connection with infrastructure projects in his district. The official has reportedly been detained. Leviste, now on his first term in Congress, has yet to issue a statement. The case puts the spotlight on corruption in public works, a longtime risk factor for infrastructure investors and a key challenge to the Philippines' economic growth agenda. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. flags another questionable infrastructure project up north. He inspected a rock shed at Camp 6 in Tuba, Benguet, declared unstable just months after completion. The structure, worth 264 million pesos, was built to catch falling debris from the mountain slope. But part of the road holding the rock shed has already eroded after recent bad weather. The president warned that poorly built projects like this are tantamount to economic sabotage.
Nakita ngayon namin yung erosion sa ilalim ng kalsada, which is the most important part, ay wala na-erode na dahil yung ginawa nilang protection wall ay ubod ng hina, ubod ng liit. At you will see it later. You can see it there sa ilalim ng tunnel. Talagang na-erode na dahil yung slope protection dito sa baba sa tabi ng ilog ay napakababa at napakahina. Kaya nung pumasok yung tubig, nung bumigat yung tubig, tangay kagad. Kaya makita mo rito, tangay na itong lahat. This was all destroyed because of the landslide here, the rock slide here, and the erosion under the road. Now, the project that was supposed to take care of this cost us 260 million, more or less, 260 million. The 260 million that the government spent for this project had no effect whatsoever as to protect the slope. Parang walang ginawa.
The damage has also hit tourism, with 35% of local businesses affected by the travel disruption. The issue highlights how substandard public works can undermine both safety and economic growth, raising questions on the quality of billions spent under the country's infrastructure program. Pressure builds on the Public Works Department with calls for its chief to step aside. Public Works Secretary Manuel Bonoan should consider going on leave, or so they say. That's according to Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, who says it would help preserve the integrity of ongoing investigations into flood control projects. Gatchalian added that no less than the Secretary must ensure there are no ghost projects by 2026. He stressed that accountability rests with Bonoan as the head of the DPWH. The senator argued that corruption cannot be concealed from an agency leader, saying it's unlikely for ghost projects to slip past the secretary. The comments come amid growing scrutiny on infrastructure spending, a pillar of the country's growth strategy, but also long shadowed by questions of waste and corruption. Flood control is one of the biggest ticket items in the national budget, and now claims of kickback are putting it under the spotlight. The House may subpoena Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Bangalong, along with the evidence he says links lawmakers to flood control project payoffs. George Cahiles.
Manila Congressman Benny Abante says it's time to name names in the flood control controversy. He's challenging Baguio City Mayor Benji Magalong to face the House inquiry.
Mahirap po yung nalalagay lang sa media, parang missing sa bungero yan. Nakakalimutan din pagkatapos. Kaya kailangan tapusin na ho natin ito sapagkat ang taong bayan po ang sumisigaw na eh. Ang taong bayan na ang ang talagang naguguluhan dito.
If Magalong refuses, Abante says the House can subpoena him and the evidence he holds. The mayor earlier said he's willing to attend hearings, but won't bring the documents linking lawmakers to corruption. House Public Accounts Committee Chair Terry Ridon says Mayor Magalong may be invited to their hearing on the condition that he names under oath the 67 contractor lawmakers allegedly involved in government projects and the legislators who received 30 to 40% kickbacks from contractors.
Trust issue yan eh. Sino ba nag-iimbestiga, di ba? Unang-una, pagkakatiwala mo ba, yung ang nag-iimbestiga, yung sila mismo yung mga sangkot.
Abante insists if politicians are indeed part of the flood control mess, evidence must be presented, not just blanket accusations that taint the entire Congress.
Yung mga kontraktor na binangkit ng ating Pangulo, meron yan sa likod ng mga opisyal ng DPWH, meron sa likod niyan ng mga elected official, kinakailangan na pong i-reveal.
Okay.
Sa lalong madaling panahon.
Abante also calls for an independent commission to investigate the corruption. And he says firms owned by relatives of government officials should be banned from serving as contractors or suppliers. George Cahiles, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
A fresh clash erupts over the national spending plan. Mamamayang Liberal Party List Representative Laila De Lima opposes Senator Panfilo Lacso's push for the Senate to pass the 6.3 trillion peso national budget without revisions. De Lima warns that rushing the measure would weaken Congress's constitutional power to scrutinize spending and could set a dangerous precedent for future corrupt presidents. She insists on a deeper review of the spending plan and accountability for those behind anomalous projects. Lacson, meanwhile, says passing the budget untouched would be an experiment, putting full responsibility for its execution on Malacanang. The debate underscores the high stakes of the 6.3 trillion peso budget, a master plan that would determine economic growth, fund essential services, and shape business confidence in government priorities. We're taking a quick break. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most. Your bottom line. Singapore Straits Times Index, however, is flat with a slight downward bias. Here at home, last Friday, the PSE Index closed nearly flat, just up by a tenth of a percent to 62.82. Turnover was thin with about 804 million shares worth 6.4 billion pesos traded, well below this year's daily average of about 7 to 8 billion pesos. Investors mostly stayed on the sidelines, though some bargain hunting did help keep the index in positive territory. Markets are closed today for the National Heroes holiday. Up ahead, all eyes are on the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas this week. Their monetary board will be meeting on Thursday, August 28th. Another 25 basis point rate cut is widely expected, with a possibility of one more by the end of the year. The move is seen to ease borrowing costs and support the equity market. Historically, rate cuts provide a boost to stocks by lowering financing costs and spurring growth. But with bond yields falling and debt markets soaring, investors now face a tough choice, facing equity upside or locking in solid returns in fixed income. Now, all eyes are also on the peso this week, with the currency seen strengthening ahead of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas' policy meeting this Thursday. Michael Ricofort, the chief economist at Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation, says the peso could gain further as the central bank is expected to deliver its third rate cut this month. But John Paulo Rivera, senior research fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, warns that the currency may soften if global oil prices climb or if remittance inflows slow after the back-to-school season. Data from the Bankers Association of the Philippines shows that the peso closed at 56.95 to the dollar last Friday, stronger by 1 centavo from Wednesday's 56.96 finish. The peso's moves heading into Thursday will be crucial for importers, exporters, and investors. Currency volatility, a direct pulse check on the economy. Now, a highly contentious bill opening the door to more telco players in the Philippines has now lapsed into law. We have the details from Hannah.
The controversial Konektadong Pinoy Act has become law without President Bongbong Marcos's signature. It lapsed into law over the weekend. Author Senator Amy Marcos welcomed this and says the law will lower internet prices, improve service, and give students special discounts. She argues no Filipino should be left behind because of costly connections. The presidential sister earlier reminded PBBM not to be influenced by powerful telcos, and if her name was the reason the bill wouldn't be signed, then just remove it, just so life won't be harder for Filipinos. For her, it's time to break the decades-old duopoly and provide faster, more affordable internet, especially in remote communities. Sponsor Senator Alan Peter Cayetano calls it a step to modernize digital infrastructure to be aligned with other ICT reforms like e-governance. DICT Secretary Henry Aguda says the law is crucial for online government services. The agency must complete the implementing rules in 90 days. But the PCTO, or the Philippine Chamber of Telecommunications Operators, representing Globe and PLDT, earlier warned the law removes safeguards. They say new players could enter without proving financial or cybersecurity readiness. The law exempts new players from securing a franchise or certificate of public convenience and necessity, removing a key safeguard for regulation. Critics warn this lowers accountability and opens the door to unvetted operators. On top of that, the law gives them 2 years before meeting cybersecurity standards, which may raise risks of attacks. PLDT earlier said the law may be questioned in court, while Globe asked that it be sent back to Congress for review. Consumer group Digital Pinoys welcomes the law, but says cybersecurity risks and consumer protections must be clearly spelled out in the rules. The DICT will now ensure that this legislation will deliver real, tangible benefits to Filipinos as soon as possible. Hannah T, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
A new law promises to change the internet landscape here in the Philippines. The Konektadong Pinoy Law, also known as the Open Access in Data Transmission Act, has now lapsed into effect. The measure streamlines licensing, promotes infrastructure sharing, and allows new players to invest in data transmission without needing a congressional franchise. Proponents say it will boost competition and expand internet access to remote communities and public schools. But critics warn that it could create regulatory gaps, raise security risks, and put existing players at a disadvantage. Joining us now to discuss the broader impact on telecom companies, cable operators, and consumers, we have with us Joel Dabao, the CEO of KCAT Incorporated and the past president of the Philippine Cable Television Association. Hi, Joel, and thank you for being here with us this Monday morning.
Thank you for having me again. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, the last time we spoke, you were pushing for the passage of this bill. Now, full circle moment. It's right here.
It's wonderful. It's really a historical moment for the Philippines. We finally joined the rest of the world in removing the barriers for building internet infrastructure. It's really the big signal to the whole world that the Philippines is open now for the digital transmission business, and we're ready to accept all investments for connectivity. It's not just a win for the admin or the country, or it's really for everybody involved who's going to connect to the internet.
Yeah, let's talk about the impact on consumers. It was really just all about price and speed, and the lament was the speed is slow and the price is high. How do you think this is going to change things in terms of speed and price for this industry, this data transmission industry in the Philippines?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things about speed is it's a function of scale. We need to be able to generate more traffic to bring down that cost, and one of the big problems with that is about 40% of the homes in the Philippines don't have access to fiber internet. There are a lot of reasons for that, and the Konektadong Pinoy will remove one of the big barriers for that, and that's making it difficult for small players to lay out their infrastructure. With the change in the regulatory regime, we can expect more small players to come in and expand their infrastructure into these areas to bring these homes online. And as they bring these homes online, we can also expect that The upstream bandwidth and the middle mile costs are also going to go down as we buy more across the board, because our users are going to use more bandwidth, and we expect also more competition as we can see more players coming in to those sectors also.
How much do you think this is going to increase the size of the data transmission industry in the Philippines? When are we going to feel the gains too?
Yeah, in terms of users, there are estimates that really only 30% of the population have access to steady internet. So the growth is really difficult to measure in terms of value, but we can say that the amount of connected homes is going to grow significantly. I would expect that the majority of homes will have access to fixed line internet within
When you
the 3
say
years.
the growth is going to be significant, how significant are we talking about? How much of a percentage increase?
Looking at the total market size, I think it's easy to say we're going to see at least a 10 to 20% increase in connected homes. In terms of peso values, that's really difficult to say because of the kinds of infrastructure that are going to come in. Middle mile, data centers, the kinds of investment they're going to bring in will really depend on a lot of things that we can't see at the moment.
10 to 20% increase given what time frame?
Easily within the next 3 years. A lot of operators like myself have been dying to invest. We have the capital ready, the network designs ready, and we've just been waiting for licenses.
Okay. What, from an industry operations standpoint, what are the opportunities and challenges this is going to create, Joel?
Yeah, so the first challenge will come out from the IRR of this. We expect the implementing rules and regulations to have a very deep discussion because this is such a transformative bill. There's going to be a long discussion around the performance standards and cybersecurity standards, I imagine, especially for last mile players. So for the last mile players, it will be about being able to comply with these standards and making sure that their voices are heard. For example, for cybersecurity standards, not all cybersecurity standards can be met by small and medium enterprises. Some of them require things like makers, checkers, and authorizers, like in most financial processes. So that assumes you have at least 3 employees, which not all SMEs do.
Yeah. For the smaller last mile providers, what do you think this is going to do? How is it going to affect their ability to compete with the biggest players? I mean, and that's really the duopoly of Globe and PLDT.
The biggest benefit they're going to get is legitimization. A lot of these mom and pops have been operating without licenses. And as you can imagine, most small businesses are risk averse as it is. They're even more risk averse when they're operating under the radar. So with the legitimacy, they will have the confidence to expand their capital and also be given access to training and all of these other things that they wouldn't be able to because they were ashamed to admit that they were internet service providers for fear of being penalized. So we can see all of these businesses growing and getting better and delivering better service.
And the law mandates infrastructure sharing, something that the big businesses, Globe and PLDT, have been resisting for years. What do you think this is going to do for the smaller players like yourself?
I think it's going to be very good for the small players. Instead of having to spend large amounts of capex, we can simply opex it and lease capacity from these bigger players. I think that the bill creates enough, there's a language in the bill that allows for mechanisms to protect the infrastructure owners, to allow them to reject anyone who's going to connect to their infrastructure that may damage it.
So the ball is still in their court. And there's something to mention, they will be leasing out from the bigger players. So there is more returns on their existing assets for the bigger players.
No, absolutely. We can definitely see, I expect that they're going to have some margin expansion over the coming years as more players will be leasing capacity for them, generating them returns without extra capex.
Okay, but at the same time, this is more work for DICT.
Oh, absolutely. DICT is going to be very, very busy after this.
Okay. The DITC says foreign-controlled entities will not gain access to critical infrastructure without multi-layered vetting. Is this assurance from the DICT enough?
Absolutely. Simply because the bill now mandates that these standards exist. In the current situation, there are no government standards for it. It's up to the infrastructure owners to determine who gets access to what critical infrastructure. So with the clarifications that the DICT will come up with, we can expect that everybody will see it. It'll be transparent, and they can object if they don't agree with it. And we can follow other countries where the national security agencies have a very, very big say in who gets to connect into critical infrastructure.
Yeah, and the next big thing is the IRRs, the implementing rules and regulations. That's a 90-day timeline, right, from the passage of this bill?
Absolutely. Upon effectivity of the law, IRRs are supposed to come out in 90 days. So the discussions, I'm sure, are going to be very lively.
What would you like?
I would like to see right sizing. We need to balance everything. A lot of the criticism has been around that it's a registration mechanism, and I would like to see a balance between inclusivity, security, and performance. Right? We shouldn't lose sight of the goal. That the goal is to bring more Filipino homes online. We absolutely need to make sure that the performance is good and the cybersecurity is good, but not so much so that we restrict players from coming in and bringing more homes online.
Yeah, connectivity, it's no longer a luxury. It's a basic need, just up there with electricity and water.
Absolutely. We often see, right, that a lot of people determine where they live if there's internet. If there's no internet in this area, they're not moving. So there really is an impetus to widen the reach because we want people to grow everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Not just in the city centers.
Widen the range, but safely. There are also security safeguards. Citizen Watch Philippines was concerned about data breaches and foreign interference. What safeguards are in place so that competition doesn't come at the expense of national security?
So the law is very clear that the DICT is supposed to come up with cybersecurity standards. And every year, the NTC is supposed to ensure that all players are complying with these data security standards. So I think as far as preventing attacks goes, this is really, we will be asking all of the players to put in their best, and the NTC is going to make sure that they're doing their best. As far as national security goes, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, but looking at the different models of this kind of liberalization all across the world, the national security agencies always have a strong opinion, and they always speak to the regulator about this, and I expect the Philippines to be the same.
Okay, let's talk about the business opportunities that the passage of Konektadong Pinoy creates. For businessmen, whether investors, entrepreneurs, or regional service providers, what concrete opportunities does this Konektadong Pinoy open up?
Yeah,
And how can they get a part of that action?
The opportunity is tremendous. The digital infrastructure in the Philippines is just simply not enough. Whether it's fiber cables or towers, we need more. The population keeps growing, we keep moving to places, and this infrastructure needs to come in. On top of expanding to unserved areas, we need more resiliency. This means more backups, right? We can't just have the one backup, the two backups. For big business, we need 4 or 5 backups. So on that level of infrastructure, we can expect more investment to come in there, especially on the last mile. Lots of players are going to come in, lots of small business. We expect a lot of players to come in there. Data centers, we've seen the recent investment of Equinix, one of the largest global data center players. So the smart money is saying that the data center business in the Philippines is going to boom also. And though I'm talking a lot about new players, I expect the incumbents also to get a share. They are so big and so entrenched into the ecosystem that the rising tide really is going to lift all of the ships.
It's going to increase the size of this data industry in the Philippines.
Absolutely. As the last mile players grow, they have to get more capacity from the big players. They're going to be leasing middle mile capacity to go to their hyperscaler data centers. So really, it should drive up their sales so much.
Yeah, and should drive up opportunities as well for others that are in this industry or for people that want to get into it because, this industry requires so much infrastructure. How far are we from where we need to be? How big is that gap? Right now, there's not enough infrastructure for everything that we want to do. We need more data centers. We need more fiber cables and towers. How big is the gap from where we are to where we need to be?
Very, very far. In terms of affordability and speed, we're likened to countries where really we should be better off. Countries like Afghanistan and Bangladesh.
Wow. In terms of speed.
And affordability. And when we speak of affordability, that's as a percentage of income. So we can really expect that with more players in the last mile, the price for MB is going to go down and it should become more affordable for our countrymen. And of course, with the costs going down, performance standards have to be up also, because that's also where the competition's going to be, right? No one's going to want to buy cheap internet that's down all the time.
And huge investments. They're going to be have to laying out their own infrastructure in many cases.
Yes, yeah. There will be a balance of laying out their own and then OPEXing the other. So there will be definitely a lot of investment coming in over the next few years.
That said, how soon before we're able to feel the gains, before wholesale prices actually go down?
I can imagine we can see some things as early as a year. It really depends on when the IRR comes out and when it takes effect. Because once the first few permits come out, there's going to be a lot of aggressive expansion. Just from the existing industry players who have, I'm going to call them latent investments.
They're going to want to defend their market share.
Yeah, and the incumbents are going to want to defend their market share, so they're going to also drop prices. So really, across the board, the consumer is going to win here.
Great, good to hear. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, Joel, why it lapsed. The president made this a priority in the beginning of his term. Konektadong Pinoy was a priority for this administration. However, the president didn't sign the measure. He allowed it to lapse into law. From your perspective, why and what does this signal to the industry?
Yeah. Well, for why, I can only guess. And it seems, and since the bill was transmitted to Malacanang for signing, it's been a very busy 30 days. There's a lot that's been happening. So I can imagine that a ceremonial signing would be very difficult to table in. But ultimately, for the industry, I don't think it should be read into very much. He made it a priority bill. Some of his very important cabinet secretaries, like DepDev Secretary Balisacan and DICT Secretary Aguda, have really gone to bat for this bill. It's really showing that his administration is very much for this bill and is very serious about it. So I think as far as the industry is concerned, there shouldn't be any doubt that this is something the admin very much wants.
Yeah, well, in any case, it's here, and there's so much ahead, so much work to do, and so much possibility. Last question, Joel, before we go, what's one message you'd like to leave the general public, businesses and consumers about why this is so important, why this is a milestone, not just for the industry, but for the Philippines, not just for this administration, but for all the other administrations and just for the Philippines in terms of regional competitiveness?
First, it's really, really meaningful because it takes us to a new regime of regulation. We were one of the last nations in the world to require congressional franchise, and it's really stymied investment. So now we're really showing the world we're open for business. We want the digital players to come here and help us grow. Second, I think everyone should really prepare to use the internet properly. Right? A lot of our countrymen aren't digitally literate, and so we would like to see schools and the ICT work together to make sure that when the internet comes to everyone, they can use it properly and use it to make the most of the opportunity given to them. And I think the last important message, I think, is for the small players. Mountains were moved to make the small player take the lead in connecting the countryside. So really, it's on us to show everyone that it was worth all of the effort to make it easy for us so that we go about and do the job of connecting all of the unconnected.
Yeah, big job, but so many benefits. So many people will benefit when the job is done right. Thank you so much, Joel Dabao, the CEO of KCAT Incorporated and the past president of the Philippine Cable Television Association.
That's it. Thank you, Mikey.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Another local official is speaking out against faulty flood control projects. Occidental Mindoro Governor Eduardo Gadiano revealed serious deficiencies in projects in his province. In an interview on BNC's Weekend Agenda, the governor said approvals for flood control projects bypassed his local government, preventing local oversight and resulting in what he calls unnecessary projects.
Hindi po natin alam yung mga projects na yan. At basta na lang silang namili kung saan inilalagay. Meron pang flood control na nalagay doon sa gilid ng bundok. Yan yung bundok na, flood control na yun eh. Tapos ang napoprotektahan ay isang kubo, tapos kalahating hektaryang bukid yata yun. Pero kung dumaan yan sa amin, hindi namin pa nalagay yun doon. Mas sasabihin namin, ilagay yun doon sa papakinabangan na mapoprotektahan yung mga bahayan at saka mga kabukiran.
Faulty flood control projects that end up collapsing have cost farmers not just their crops, but their farmland as well. Gadiano is now appealing to the national government and the DPWH to include Occidental Mindoro in their investigations and to give his LGU a role in project oversight.
Gumuho yung mga flood control projects, nadurog yung mga semento, tapos yung mga buhangin na nandun sa flood control na yun, dahil malapad yon at mahaba, tumabon doon sa mga palayan. Kaya ngayon wala nang mga bukid yung ating mga kapatid na magsaka. Yung iba naman na lubog yung kanilang mga palay kaya nabulok. Kaya yun, kawawa yung ating mga kapatid na magsasaka. Panawala na yung bukid nila dahil natabunan ng graba. Ibig sabihin, bukod doon sa nasira yung kanilang palayan, ay nawala pa yung kanilang bukid na dahil hindi na pwedeng taniman dahil puro graba na at galing yun doon sa flood control.
Another scandal hits new law enforcement, this time linked to illegal online sabong. The Senate Committee on Games and Amusement will summon officials from the Philippine National Police and the National Bureau of Investigation amid allegations that some benefited from a 2 million peso bribe paid by illegal operators. Senator Erwin Tulfo, the committee chairman, revealed he received information that several regional directors, provincial directors, police chiefs, and NBI officials were involved. He noted that online sabong operators earn an estimated 600 million pesos monthly. But after shelling out about 200 million pesos in bribes to high-ranking PNP and NBI officials, their net income dropped to 400 million. Tulfo also pointed to rumors that NBI, CIDG, and police officials may be part of the scheme. The allegations, if proven true, reinforce concerns about how illegal gaming networks continue to flourish despite crackdowns undermining both law enforcement, integrity, and government revenues. Power consumers may get some relief on rates after the Energy Regulatory Commission cleared Meralco to source 100 megawatts of baseload supply from Aboitiz Power's coal-fired plant. In a decision dated August 22, the ERC granted interim relief to Meralco and GN Power Dinginin Limited Company for their power supply agreement at an annual capacity rate of 17,228 pesos. This translates to 1 peso and 97 centavos per kilowatt hour, excluding fuel and other charges. The regulator says the rates are lower than previously approved supply agreements for the same plant. The decision took into account competitive selection process compliance, the supply-demand outlook, PPSA features, and bid prices and rate evaluation. The move comes as power costs remain a major pressure point for both households and businesses, making supply deals like this critical to stabilizing next generation leader at the helm. The move promises more choices for consumers and stiffer competition in any industry already in transition. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga has the detail.
It's a fresh new chapter for car brands Lynk & Co and Baik as they officially opened their flagship showrooms in Quezon City. Both brands fall under the wing of United Asia Automotive Group Inc. or UAAGI, led by Bilyonaryo Romel Sitin.
More business, more sales, more cars, more traffic.
The Sitin family isn't new to the automotive scene. In the late 1990s, they built Subic-based United Auctioneers Inc. into a powerhouse of used Japanese vehicles, popularizing large-scale auctions of trucks, heavy equipment, and industrial gear. The clan also runs UAAGI, stewarding brands such as Photon, Cherry, Lynk & Co, and Baik under Romel's watch. The showroom opening signals a leadership transition within UAAGI as Romel eases out of the spotlight and his son Timothy steps in to lead.
So Lynk & Co and Baik has been a growing brand since last year. We've been very happy with the consistent growth that we've been experiencing, and we expect to boost that further with the presence of Lynk & Co and Baik North EDSA.
Officially launched in April 2024, UAAGI is determined to make Lynk & Co stand out in a very crowded market.
We continue to boost our exposure, we continue to boost our products, let people feel how good our products are. We believe like people really won't experience Lynk & Co until you drive our vehicles.
Born from the global partnership of Volvo and Geely, Lynk & Co combines Swedish engineering with Chinese innovation. The latest model to arrive in the Philippines is the 08 EMP hybrid SUV, which offers up to 1,400 kilometers of range. On top of that, it can go up to 205 kilometers on pure electric power, a big plus for drivers looking for both performance and sustainability. For dealer principal Vince Licop, it's clear that Chinese car brands are no longer the underdog.
Chinese car sells around 2,000 units per month, or 24,000 annually. Almost double from barely 5 years. Remember, we have the pandemic.
Also flying in for the big event was Jeff Cao, Regional Director for Lynk & Co East Asia, who gave BNC Mobility a look into where the brand fits in the Geely family.
I want to go upgrade and to capture the premium segment. And we also import the pure EV car to Philippines. And Lynk & Co, their mission are different. Lynk & Co, we want to get the high-end segment. So, and Lynk & Co is good at the hybrid technology. You know, the EMP is the most advanced technology in hybrid. So when the car goes on the high-speed way, so it will switch, use the gasoline automatically. And when it meets the traffic jam, it switch to use electric.
Even Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte attended the launch, showing her support for the future of sustainable mobility while staying true to her advocacy for public transportation.
Kapag may bagong development sa lungsod Quezon, kailangan may kasama na po ang charging infrastructure. Dahil ang assumption po doon, perhaps half of the vehicles there at some point will already be electric, and we will need to put all of the support mechanisms.
With a fresh lineup, bold ambitions, and the next generation at the helm, Yua Agi is clearly steering into the future, and they're not looking back. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Canada is easing up on its trade war with the United States. Prime Minister Mark Carney says his country will lift some of its billions of dollars worth of regulatory tariffs on U.S. goods. But levies will remain on automobiles, steel, and aluminum. The announcement comes a day after Carney and President Donald Trump spoke over the phone. The first conversation since both countries missed a self-imposed deadline for a new trade deal. Canada had earlier slapped a 25% levy on U.S. goods worth $21 billion in response to Washington's own tariffs. Carney said Canada will now match the United States by dropping duties on goods compliant with the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Free Trade Agreement. The move takes effect on September 1st. Elsewhere in the world, fresh violence erupts in the Middle East as Israeli airstrikes hit the Yemeni capital Sana'a. At least 2 people were killed and 35 others wounded on Sunday after strikes pounded multiple locations in the city. Firefighters raced to contain blazes triggered by the attacks. Israel's defense minister said the targets included the presidential palace and 2 power plants. The strikes came in retaliation for Houthi missiles fired toward Israel.
The Houthi terror regime is learning the hard way that it is paying and will continue to pay a very heavy price for its aggression against the state of Israel. Whoever attacks us, we attack them. Whoever plans to attack us, we attack them. I believe the entire region is learning about the strength and determination of the state of Israel.
Pope Leo XIV renews his appeal for peace in Ukraine. In his traditional weekly address from the Vatican, the Pope urged the faithful to join Ukrainians in their spiritual initiative, the World Prayer for Ukraine. The call coincided with Ukraine's 34th Independence Day from the Soviet Union. But even with talk of peace, the deadliest European war since World War II still rages on. Now we have some fresh developments right here at home. Here's an update on Batangas 1st District Representative Leandro Leviste. In a statement, his office confirms that a case against DPWH Batangas 1st District Engineer Abelardo Calalo will be filed at the office of the Batangas Provincial Prosecutor on Tuesday. Bilyonaryo.com first reported that Calalo offered a 360 million peso kickback to Leviste, which he turned down. The bribe was linked to infrastructure projects in his district. Leviste stressed that corruption at the DPWH should not be tolerated and urged the public to demand better quality projects at lower costs. On another front, Politico.com reports that Baguio City Mayor Benjamin Magalong could be in line to take over as DPWH Secretary. This comes after the mayor was seen with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. inspecting infrastructure damage along Quezon Road over the weekend. Magalong has been one of the most vocal local executives against corruption in public works, claiming that only 30 to 35% of project funds actually go to construction. Calls have also grown for current DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan to step down amid the controversy over the flood control project. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Panel.